What's up, everybody? Welcome to Hollywood Unveiled, where we pull back the curtain on the Hollywood entertainment industry and get to know the people behind the magic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Logan.
And Logan, today we got an awesome guest.
Oh, you aren't kidding. This was a really cool, yeah, okay, maybe I'm biased because, he's kind of in close to my little niche of stuff with makeup and effects, but yeah, no, there was some really cool insight from this guy with this interview today.
Well, let's tell everybody who it is. It's George Frangadakis. He made a name for himself as an accomplished special effects supervisor before making something of a career pivot into the world of mask making. He's now co-owner of Immortal Masks, where you can find some amazing artisanally crafted silicone masks for the Halloween season, for horror movies, or really just, Valentine's Day. So
everyone needs a good mask to celebrate Arbor Day,
There you go. Exactly. But the masks they make are incredible. I've had the honor of getting to try some of them on myself, and my God, they're insane. Each piece is a real just masterpiece in and of itself. But
I've seen so many clips of those masks, and I'm exceptionally jealous that you've gotten to try one, because I'd be very curious just to see how that kind of vibe goes.
I think we can make that happen. But I think we had an awesome conversation with him, and let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
This is George Frangadakis of Immortal Masks. Hey George, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Jake. Good to see you again.
George and I believe, met some 10 years back on the Devil's Carnival, right? And you were, I think you were special effects supervising?
I was, yeah, on that show. I was working at the time at VGP FX for Vincent Guassini, and I was the Makeup FX Supervisor for the shop and then on the show too.
Yeah, and it was a blast getting to meet you on that set, and that was my very first film I was a VFX supervisor on, which I think to that capacity at the time was just leaning over, looking at the monitor, going, "You're good," things like that.
That film is still probably the most near and dear to my heart of anything that I've worked on, and it's and we've worked on since then all kinds of crazy stuff, but I don't think there's anything that can ever capture what that was like working on that film.
Yeah, that was something for sure.
Controlled chaos. I don't know, but it was magical. I'll give it that. Every time that you thought that it was going to be, it was just too hard. Whatever, you stepped outside the trailer and you saw all the weird stuff going on, and it kind of just invigorated you. Plus, I think that was my first acting thing. I was
that's right.
Darren put me in it for a hot minute. I was it comes in the trailer and goes, "Hey George, you want to be in the movie?" And I'm like, "Yes, sure."
Yeah. And those don't know is that's Darren Limbausman who directed it, and it was that you made a great killer in that.
I was a killer. I killed a girl. It was Jessica Loudness. It was in 90210 or something like that.
Yeah.
Give me a gun. I'm like, do I need to change? Oh no, you're great. I'll lose the scarf.
Then you went on to be an antagonist to Emily Autumn and all kinds of other things, right?
For music video, right? And then I went on tour with Emily for Warped Tour, and then I was I think 3 different characters in Devil's Carnival too. So thanks for putting me in your movies.
Let's start back at the beginning. I mean, what got you interested in getting into this industry from way back when? God, I mean, so it's a really weird roundabout story of because I didn't land in Hollywood until I was in my 30s. So I had a couple other career things before that. But if we really to go back, it was from childhood. But I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 70s and 80s, and so I had a profound interest in film and everything that kind of came around that. But there was no internet. There was nobody I knew that was even in the industry. And so as a kid, with this, interest in the movie monsters and film in general, I just didn't really know how to go about that. And so I went off to college and I picked what my dad did because I didn't really want to think about it. And my dad's a dentist in the Bay Area, and so I was. So is mine, by the way.
Yeah. So I was a biochem major that was pre-dental for UOP, and I really just kind of wanted to go to college get away from my really good Greek parents. They're awesome, but I think I wanted to kind of, I wanted to go, for better lack of terms, fuck off. I wanted to go I was there for the social aspects, which was not the easiest thing to do while being a biochem major.
Right, yeah.
But I didn't really want to think about it. I just kind of went through the motions. And when the prospect of going to dental school came up, I was just like, it kind of finally dawned on me that this was not what I wanted to do in my life. And so I broke it to my dentist dad, and he was the coolest person I've ever met about it. But with this conversation, he was like, if you don't love it, don't do it. But I saw things in you that'd be a good dentist, but I love what I do. So if you don't love it, don't do it. And I was like, oh, I'm off the hook. And he's like, but you got to get a job. And I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
So I
hook onto a different one.
Right. And I had no idea what that was going to be.
But you still make teeth, don't you?
I do. Actually, my dad loved that later that I actually did that. So from at that point, I still didn't know what I was going to do. My dad was venturing into his first investment business. It was a restaurant, and he owns two extremely successful restaurants in the San Francisco Bay Area. And when they were planning the first one, I sat in on the planning meetings. I thought, okay, I like this. This is something I think I can do. And then my good Greek dad didn't believe in giving me a job, so I had to apply for a job at his own restaurant. And smartly, their own management was like, we're not going to hire the boss's son because that guy's going to replace us one day. So there was no job for me. And so I ended up going to my grandfather. And this is where the story gets weird. My grandfather owned one of the oldest notorious strip clubs in the San Francisco Bay Area, in the Silicon Valley.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. And it was a place that I just grew up around. It was just always there. I didn't really think twice about it. Like later, my friends were like, you didn't go hang out there? I was like, no, I was just there. That's what my grandfather did. But I went there with the intention of learning the bar end of the restaurant industry. And I was 22, and it was probably the best thing and the worst thing that could ever happen to me. But I ended up going to work for my grandfather, and I was good at it. And it seemed like nobody else in my family wanted the business, so I was like, oh, okay, I'll go do that. But I was a little too young and probably a little too immature, and I wasn't really done with my college ways. But I did end up taking over the bar for the most part, and then I just hired all my friends, and then I moved them into a house, and I got to extend my college career for a couple more years. Well, more than that, almost a decade. And then everything that kind of came along with it, which in my case were the bad things. Yeah. I just got in with the wrong crowd. And so at 30 years old, I was a burnout wreck. And I knew that was I knew that I shouldn't be there anymore, that there had to be something else in my life to do. And so I started over, and now it was a little bit different. So I'm 30 years old, and faced with the prospect of, so if you're starting over, what do you want to do with your life? And I decided in a roundabout way to look into what I want to do when I was a kid. And I have a family friend, another lucky thing, that was a publicist in San Francisco, and her good friend was Lynn Hale, and Lynn was at the time like #1 at Lucasfilms under George at the time. So I had this dinner with Lynn at my dad's restaurant in San Francisco, and she's like, I want you to come down to Skywalker Ranch. I want you to meet Ian McCaig. And yeah, so right. So if you know who Ian is, he's a conceptual artist. He designed a lot of the Star Wars universe during the prequels and whatnot. And so I went to Skywalker Ranch with a little portfolio of artwork that I'd done when I was a kid and younger, and it was like, and I met with this guy who was just super nice. And we spent all day there talking about art and movies, and I had lunch there and I had dinner there, and like it was like the end of the day, and Ian was like, so George, it sounds like you want to go back to film school or go to film school. And I was like, what? I'm like, no. It's like, I already did school. I don't really want to do that again. I was just kind of hoping to get a job, like, and he said, I have a friend who is the director of the film department at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. Let me make a phone call. I think I can get you in a class. It's summer class we're starting. And I didn't know how to say no. Like the guy was so nice to me that I was like, I literally went to film school because this dude was nice to me. And so I reluctantly enrolled in a class, and it was Super 8 and storyboarding. And so, and the first day I got to class, they put a Super 8mm camera in your hand, and I was hooked. It was over. I was back in school.
Wow.
And so I ended up enrolling in the master's program there, and I was a directing major, and I met so my dad, this is the journey. My dad gave me advice again that I didn't listen to. He said he gave it to me before, but I didn't listen to him. And he gave me advice again. And I guess this is probably a good piece of advice I'd give to anybody. He said, it's not a popularity contest. Find the best and work with them. And I listened to him this time. So I found what I found as in my class, what I thought were some of the best people. I was also older than most of the people in my school by this time. I was that college reentry student that like I hated when I was 18, like the 30-year-old dude that sat in the front became friends with the teacher, and that was me all of a sudden. But I found some of the best, and I started working with them. And we had a cool little team of like filmmakers, and we would, and then there was this one dude in my class named Kaz Franowski. Shout out to Kaz. And he was kind of like, I don't know. I mean, he won't get mad. He was like the misanthrope. He was like the film snob, the one that like everybody else hated because he thumbed his nose like everybody else's films. And but he was really good, but he would always do films by himself. Like he'd make these cool little like stop motion movies with like dolls, but he put them like in a Nazi Joy Division, and it was like poignant and touching, and he would beat my group at the film festivals every year. I was like, man, this sucks. And so I got a call from him but I was friends with him. For some reason, like we hit it off. Like maybe because I was older, maybe because I didn't really care. I wasn't there like to try to make a film about waking up and thinking about committing suicide. All the 18-year-olds trying to make like films where they think they're like it's like
you want a career.
Well, I was there just to learn the tools. Like
yeah.
I was there going like I'm my first film was going to be like important, and I'm like my first film in film school was I put the Predator from the Predator movies in a strip club because I thought it would be funny. Like
that's hilarious.
Because I mean I had a Predator suit and then I had access to a strip club, so I shot a 60mm film. It was at the time called Sexual Predator, but because that wasn't really appropriate for YouTube. And I think it's actually still on YouTube, and it's like Predator in a strip club. It's like black and white, like overshot. But that was the type of stuff I was doing, and because I wasn't taking what I was doing too seriously, I was more working the tools. Yeah, and I think Kaz appreciated that, and that's why we became friends. So halfway through my journey in a film school, I get a call from him, and he said, "I have this idea for a film, but it's bigger than me, and people don't like me, and I don't work with people well, and I was wondering if you would produce it." And I said, "Okay," and so this is kind of like the first thing that led me onto like what I do now. I brought my film friends in, the ones that didn't like him, and then I brought him in, and I got them to work together, and I got them to see what I saw in this guy, and then I got to watch him actually flourish working with people, and it was like this, like all of a sudden I changed directions. I went from a directing major, which I think a lot of people wanted to do, to I realized that I was just better working with people. I was better at overseeing a project and putting people together and making all these little parts work together. And so the film was fun. I got to watch my group of friends work really well with what I consider a brilliant director, who now went off to go work in the computer industry and doesn't do film at all anymore. But and I changed directions. I went to producing. Yeah. And so that was my track. And I graduated, and I then got afraid to move to Los Angeles because that's what you do. You either stay in the Bay Area and you work on like commercials or industrials, or you pack up and you move to LA and you give it a shot. And, so I hung out for about a year longer than I probably should have. And I had when I was directing, I had a directing partner who was from Brazil, and he kind of just made the decision for us. He's just like, "We're moving." Start packing. We're going to go like next week, and we're going to look for a place to live.
It's always easier when somebody else makes the decision for you sometimes when you're afraid to do it, right?
Yeah. And he was a good friend. I was hanging out for I think I was in a bad relationship at the time. And I was kind of like, it was going south, and I was like, I just was milking staying home longer, and so he was right, and we moved, and so yeah, I got to LA, and I ended up getting a job right away. So my third week in Los Angeles, I was working at the Emmys through a cousin of mine who happened to be head of page operations for the Emmys and the Academy Awards. And so it was just, those things like they call me up and they needed help. And I came down there, and suddenly I'm working for Ampus. And so I was working the Academy Awards, and I was working at the Emmys, and I became the part of the stage management crew. So I was part of I was a green room manager. So I was in charge of the holding station for all the celebrities.
Oh, wow.
Right.
I know I've seen all your pictures when you post every year. I would see you at the Academy Awards. I'm like, what the hell is George doing there? That's crazy.
Right. So well,
not that you don't belong there. I'm just saying, I was like,
it popped the proverbial cherry pretty fast by being smack dab in the middle of actors I'd seen for years. I mean, I think Pacino was there. Like my first years at the Emmys, I was like, oh crap, that's fucking Al Pacino. It was like I think the Jack Kerouacian film, or I forget, it was something like that he was there for. And so so eventually I kind of went on to do that.
What, going from producing, kind of doing that stuff there, what sparked your interest in jumping over into stuff like the Immortal Masks and kind of getting you?
Okay, that's the next part of the story. Yeah. So again, I had this interest in the world of effects. Like, it was probably more interesting to me than anything else, but I had kind of, like, when I was younger, I didn't have an avenue to pursue that. Like the film school that I went to had like a makeup class elective at the time, but not a department. And so, but I was, I was interested in how to do this, and I was learning how to do it on the internet, because this was the age of the forums. And so so all that, like the cosplay forums, the early ones, before there was a Facebook and like there was a Predator forum. It just started. It was like I called the Hunter's Lair. It was and that's where
I think I followed this one for a little bit.
Yeah. So I was like on there, and like when it just started, so there was like 12 guys on there, and all I at the time was just like, I need to get a Predator suit to put in my strip club movie. So like that's kind of like where it started. And then but it was a really do-it-yourself version of things, where eventually I think a couple prospective pros would jumped on, and maybe there was more talk about how to. So I was learning the vocabulary kind of like when I was going to film school. When I was going to film school, you really learn more like set hierarchy, like in vocabulary, and you get the basics, but no one's making like, it's not like Lucas coming out with Star Wars right then. You're learning just how to talk kind of,
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so I came to LA with that at least, and an interest in effects, and thankfully, again, a father who just seems to know a lot of people. Another thing I attributed to my dad later. But one of the things he did do is one of the people he knew was one of his dental school buddies who was down in LA. He was a Beverly Hills dentist. And his daughter, a girl that I grew up with, because all the families grew up together, her best friend was Debbie Winston. And I got a call one day and said, Stan Winston wants to meet you. I was like, pardon me?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. So I got invited to go to Stan's, and I spent 3 consecutive days going back. And I just I would go in, he would meet up with me in the morning, I would sign in, and then he would just go, okay, go ask questions. And then we would meet again for lunch, and then we'd meet again at the end of the day.
Wow.
Right. So it was amazing. Like I think Iron Man had already been shot, but it wasn't out yet. And wow. I got to see they were like getting Ironmonger ready. So I was fun things, and like all the stuff in his trophy room and like the Lake Placid, crops on the wall, and all these great people were there. And I got a chance to run around and just talk to people. And then on the third day, Stan met with me and kind of talked about what did I want to do with my career down here. And then the first thing he did is I had this picture. It's I have two pictures like that day. And one of them was with me and Stan, and I'm holding his Academy Awards. And he had said, you ever want to win one, you got to feel how heavy these are. And so here I'm dork, staying with Stan Winston to his Academy Awards. And then we started talking about what I was doing. And he said, George, this industry can use somebody like you. And I was like, Stan, I have no idea what you're talking about, man. I'm like, I hung out with these people. I cannot do what they do. Like they're amazing. These artists you have here. And he's all, George, I was a failed actor. And he's like, you can just as easily produce an effects company as you can a movie. And I had no idea really what that meant. But what he was initially doing was he was introducing me to the world of effects supervision, and it was like kind of that. It was like the idea of what I was good at in film school, and it was the idea of what I was good at even when I was running my grandfather's club. I was good at making things happen, like all together. So I quit working for Ampus. So I started working for like I worked at the shows, but I took an internship. I answered a blind ad and like there's a replica prop for him.
Oh wow, yeah,
yeah, right. And it was like intern at Pro Effects Studio. I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. So I called and I showed up at VGPFX at Vincent Guastini's.
Yeah.
And at the time I didn't know who Vincent was, and it was no disrespect to Vincent. I didn't know a lot of it.
Sure, yeah.
So I had to look him up. I'm like, oh, he worked on Dogma and he did like Requiem for a Dream. I like those movies, and like, oh, that's cool. So I showed up there, and I was like, it was like, oh, is this gonna be a push the broom like internship? And it was like, So, but I was there like 3 other dudes, and I was the old guy. And so I think maybe Vinny was like, like, I can't make the old guy push the broom. So like, what can you do? And I was like, well, I could cast resins. There was a couple things I knew how to do. Mm-hmm. And so I sat in the back on the outside. I was trimming helmets. It was a movie coming up for like the science fiction movies. I was trimming helmets. And I kind of like did that. And I fast became friends with Vincent. Like we had the same musical tastes. And but I still was a guy that kind of sat in the back and like watched all this stuff happen. And he had an alien movie. And it was like a sci-fi channel movie, and it was like going to shoot in Louisiana, and it was one of those quick and dirty. Like there was no time to do anything, so it was like everything was being done out of like they were sculpting some things, and there's some things were old molds or pulling parts out of it, and they got stumped on a creature suit, and it was like the first time I spoke up, like on like an idea I had based off something I learned on the internet forum probably, mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it was like, oh, the new guy jumped in, and suddenly I was like, I think snapped to like what I was good at. And it was kind of more like, I just kind of took over a little bit.
Problem solving, right?
Right. And that's what it was. And so next thing you know, I'm on set in Louisiana, and same deal. There was a supervisor before me, but he wasn't really in the effects grid. He was from the props world. And he was just a friend of Vincent's that was helping out. And he kind of was like, he kind of like nuts on the show. That's the best way to describe it. Like, and he just wasn't present, and the crew was in trouble because things were being thrown at the effects team that like weren't discussed properly beforehand. And I came from film school, and I also came from a strip club, so I knew how to like kind of half bullshit and half I knew the language, the vocabulary, and I knew the set hierarchy. So I knew who to become friends with on set. Mm-hmm. I knew how to get things to work in our advantage, and so. Yeah, we stayed there for like a couple months. We were on this one show, and then we jumped onto another show, and then I came back and I was the studio supervisor of VGPFX. When you work in a smaller shop, which isn't a bad thing, it's a good thing. You kind of have to wear a lot of different hats. Even if you're a supervisor, you got to jump in and you got to do a lot of things. So while some like some people were better at like the sculptors, like and they're still good friends of mine, thankfully. And then that's where my partner Andrew Freeman was the one of the head sculptors there, and John Wrightson, and so to this day we're still all close friends. I found my niche and things I was good at. I was better at fabricating, and I built blood rigs, and I could help apply and remove. I was just better at coordinating and doing things that were like the better artists could handle on their own, but I could do all the shit job kind of stuff. But I was really good at putting a team together, and I was good at talking to the directors, and I was good at talking to the producers, and I understood how to break a script down. And so, yeah, so we did that for a while, and I still worked at the Academy Awards because it was fun to work there. So I'd work at the shows, I would take a week off and go work the shows. And then it just kind of like, I don't know. I think what happened is like, you just kind of, sometimes you run your course with something. And I think at the end of the day, I was meant to probably do my own thing. And respectfully, it was Vincent's shop. And so sure. It was, at the time, it wasn't necessarily the best of breakups because they don't always go well, and so I didn't leave when I left, it wasn't under the best of circumstances because it was frustrating and I was still trying to find my way and didn't even know if like this is what I wanted to do anymore. Mm-hmm. So I quit. We were on a music video and I had enough and I walked. And and at the time, my partner Andrew Freeman was starting a company in his garage called Immortal Masks, and it was like this mask company. And I remember at the time, like, you know, like if you were in the effects industry, you kind of look down at that. It's like, whatever.
Masks.
Yeah, Halloween.
Yeah, you know? Yeah.
Because no, we're gonna work on movies. You know, it's Halloween.
I'm sure there was a joke in there about like, so we're gonna see you over at Spirit next, or
it was just like, you know, I don't want to hear you're too busy with Horror Nights because I Horror Nights a bunch of effects artists and they would go do that. And so what did happen is that when Andrew started this company in his garage and it ran for about a year and a half, and he had an original partner, and the original partner wasn't a good person. It was just a guy that like he basically put up some money. I think they like maybe like $4,000. You know, like that's what they started the company on. And so he wasn't a good person. They caught him doing something shady. And he said, basically, Andrew said, I'm buying you out. I'm either buying you out, either take the deal, right? Or I'm closing the company. I'm going to start with a new name. And so the guy they took the deal. And so it was like weeks before I quit, Vincent told Andrew, he's all like, you need to find a George, like find one of me. And and then I became available.
He did.
Yeah. So I quit. I remember it was the nighttime. It was the only time I've really done like, you know, an F you, I'm out of here, quit. You know, sorry, Vincent. But, you know, we're friends now. So it's I think he knows the history. But I walked and it was just a rough night and I had enough and I was kind of over it.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks later, I got a phone call from Andrew and saying, hey man, so a bunch of us quit working at Vincent's and I think I want to pursue this full time. Would you be interested in coming and take a look at my mask company? And I said, no, because I was over effects. I was done with it. I was like,
no, oh. Steve Jobs, I don't want to be a part of Apple.
Right. Yeah. I it just left a bad taste in my mouth. And I wasn't sure if that was really what I wanted to do. At the time I was working with my friend Destin Pfaff. And you know, Destin, he was at the time on the show called Millionaire Matchmaker. He was a co-host of that, but he was a writer, producer, and he wrote and produced a movie called Sushi Girl that I'd worked on.
Oh, okay, right.
Mark Hamill and Noah. Yeah. So Destin and I became close. I became close with those people. Kind of, they were the next best thing to like to the Devil's Carnival group because it was a fun group of people I got to work with. I'm still friends with to this day. And so I thought I was going to write a movie with him. Like I'm going to go write. I'm going to produce it, and that was my thing.
Yeah.
And at the time I had, I was with my ex and we just had my son, Dante, and so I had a newborn. I quit a job and I had a newborn. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to go, you know, write a movie. And then I kind of like the reality set in going, this is going to take a while. Like you're going to be jobless for like a good year and a half. Like, can you do that right now? So I called Andrew and said, all right, let me come down. And so I showed up at, like the first week that he was moving into what would be our first shop. And I'm like, okay, I kind of get what you're doing here. So tell me about like, you know, who, you know, this business and tell me about who your like, what's your competition looking like? And he told me about, there was two companies at the time that they were kind of, they would be competitive. And I think I like ran the tax returns on one of them and kind of saw what they were doing. And like, I was like, you know, why you make a better product, you're a better artist. Why don't you do better than them? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, that's why I come run my company. Mm-hmm. So I came on as an employee. It kind of clicked. Like the ball started rolling pretty fast, to tell you the truth. And I think it was like anywhere between a 3 to 6 month range of when I'd started working for Andrew that I proposed something. And I said, hey man, listen, at the time that I think I was in my 40s now, like my young 40s. And so, or I was just turning 40 or something like that. I said, listen, I said, I'm not really looking for a job anymore. I'm looking for a career. And so I said, I'll stick around, but I'll probably take off. I said, or sell me half your company. I said, I think this is a good fit. I think we're onto something. And so we got our families together. That was like the first thing. Like, so the other partner that came in at the time was Michelle Freeman, Andrew's wife. And because when he brought out his partner, he needed somebody to help like keep the books, just something that like the artist part of him couldn't do. And so she came as a partner. And then I remember like my family and their families met, and it was like this cool like vibe of like everyone's approval kind of came. And yeah, so I came in, I bought half the company, and it was a good idea and it worked. You know?
Dude.
So, yeah. And so the funny thing is we essentially at the time we kind of left Hollywood because we were pursuing a retail product. But really all we really wanted to do was make monsters the way that we wanted to make monsters. Like, cause we grew up that I grew up planning my Halloween costume out, like, you know, in the spring, you know, like, I loved going to Halloween stores and mask stores and I wanted to own the Predator. I was the guy that watched the movies and, you know, I didn't care. I was like, how do I get that? I want that.
Yeah.
So essentially that's what kind of we did. We figured there had to be more like-minded people like us. We just had to find them, you know, willing to spend money on that movie monster. And so we did this, and the first people that catch on was haunted attractions, like theme parks and haunted attractions were the first.
Oh yeah.
Because we were offering a 10-second solution to a complex makeup application, something that we take advantage or take for granted living in Los Angeles. But if you're in the Midwest and you have like a cornfield like maze, you may not have access to the type of talent that we'd have here.
Yeah.
And so we were making these things that went on really fast, and they looked like something that would step off of a set. And then we just kind of hit the ground running. And because we like making monsters, that became the MO, like just keep making them. Like, and eventually we kind of caught and then surpassed our competition, just in sheer numbers, if anything.
Jesus. Yeah, I'll say you got yourself in a position where you can just make basically whatever you want, it sounds like, because the number of masks and new designs you come up with every year, what's that looking like now?
Like 60 new designs a year, like or more sometimes. Like yeah, and yeah, it's weird. But
and what is the investment into making each one? I know that if you're going to start making something, in order to make that mold so you can mass multiply it,
right? So
that initial investment.
It starts with an idea, which is usually me and Andrew at night or sitting around and kind of talking about something, you know, something that scares us, or a trope, you know, vampires, you know, something like that. How do we reinvent the wheel again? And yeah, and then it goes into, you know, design. Either Andrew sketches something out first, or we just go straight to like, references. We'll find like, you know, nature and stuff. And it goes to sculpture. So the first investment is the sculpture. After that, it's production molds. So in the early days, we outsourced our mold making, and we were lucky enough to have other friends that were starting out at the same time that we were. And so, like Frank Ippolito, who now owns Thingergy, and he was, you know, he had a boutique mold making shop. That was his, like, that's how, when he got time to stop working for other people, that was his gig. So, you know, perfect pair, like start making molds, and then we would start enlisting our friends that we started with, you know, John Wrightson, which is late Bernie Wrightson's son, you know, Charlie Hernandez, some other good sculptors. And then as I think we started becoming a bit more known, obviously our peer group started widening, and we started becoming friends, you know, or name people and whatnot. And luckily now we were able to kind of pull from all kinds of different great artists that we respect and we love, but are happy to be good friends of ours too. So we can give friends jobs, and we get a cool sculpture out of it now. But yeah, to go after what you said, like the investment is one, hiring a sculptor, you know, and even if it's my partner, if it's Andrew sculpting, like he draws a salary. So there's that, you know, and then our production molds, and then building the team that we built now. We started like with 5. There was like 5 of us, you know. So now there's 40 full-time artists.
40.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
All in-house, or are these the outsourced artists that you bring in?
I think there's like 30 some odd in-house, and then we have like a couple exterior hair punchers, and then seamstresses, and then and then sculptors are all contract. We have like kind of one or two sometimes in-house that stay for a long time, but then everybody else is kind of contract. I mean, a lot of this was learning as we were going, because when you get into an emerging industry, and especially a niche emerging industry, there's not a lot in front of you, like that you learn from. You kind of have to learn from a trial and error. Like a lot of what we did was like I always say that like navigating Hollywood wasn't too unlike running a strip club. I mean, what I do for a job, it wasn't too much, because when I was working there,
the floors are just as sticky.
Right. Trust me, they are. But what I had to do is it was a business. So and it's an odd business. So it's different hours and whatnot. So I was used to that. But what I had to, once you make these masks, you have to sell them too. Like you have to find people. And so I was good at with people. I was good at analyzing and interpreting people quickly. And that's something you have to do when you're in that industry, because you don't know who's going to come in and spend, thousands of dollars. You don't know who's going to start a fight. You don't know, like I had to know who was walking through my door the minute I looked at them. And so I got really good at being able to kind of figure out people in general. And that really helped with the selling something that people were not familiar with aspect of the job. And now it's such a big thing that like, one of the things that we pride ourselves is our customer service. If it's not me, it's anybody, my admin too. I always respect the fact that these people are spending $700 or more on a piece of rubber.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to treat them like that. I'm extremely accessible to all our client base. Our client base is very global now. So I spend a lot of nights answering emails that are in Europe and
Oh man.
But it's interesting. It's gotten big now. I mean, if you followed some of the stuff we're doing, the entertainment industry came back around like years later. And so when I say we left the film industry, it was just more like we pursued and elevated a different aspect that really wasn't explored yet, and we became viable to the entertainment industry later. COVID was definitely one of the things that helped in that. That quicker alternative to a makeup application became very viable when you couldn't have actors in a chair for too long. So we started getting to work with like companies like Legacy Effects, which again, full circle, that was Stan's.
And, and then later, it's funny, when I was at Stan's, I met Matt Winston for the first time there. Like he just happened to blow in that day, and Matt was acting back then. This is long before there was a Winston school and stuff like that. So I distinctly remember meeting Matt. And then later we became friends, and like we became teachers at a school, and so there's so many full circle things in my in Los Angeles. But so we got to work with Legacy. We did some cool fun things with them. We came in and consulted on Mandalorian originally, and then it led to some other cool projects that we worked on with them. I was gonna ask you, how often do you find yourself on set these days?
Never.
Really?
Yeah, not very often.
Okay, rephrase. How often does Immortal Mask have a presence on set these days?
Well, I mean, we do. It's like every year there's something that goes out to set. We do a lot of music these days. Like it always comes in waves. So we have a lot of band clients right now. Like we do the band Ghost, and it's cool because some of these like Pucifer, which I'm a Tool fan, so like getting to work with Maynard and doing stuff with them was a great fun. And we did Kendrick Lamar this year and Shania Twain. Be surprised how many people are using masks.
So what demon mask is in a Shania Twain concert?
Yeah,
nothing. It was funny. I didn't even know I didn't understand what they even wanted when they were calling me. I was like, I don't get it. Why do you need them? Her management bought like 3 of my generic female masks, like middle-aged female masks. And they were trying to explain it. I'm like, I kept thinking they were trying to double her. I'm like, wouldn't it be just better if you found like an impersonator? Like, I'm like, oh, okay. I'll sell you these masks. And then we did, and we shipped them out to like these locations. And then a quick job for Kendrick Lamar came in. So it took a lot of our focus for the next couple of weeks. And I kind of forgot about that. And I was like, wait, well, what did she use that for? So I looked up one of the concerts, and she starts the song, her first song in the concert, she's disguised in the crowd. And and so I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, it's like, the band's up on stage, and I was like, where's Shania? And a spotlight, and she's been next to you the whole time as like somebody else.
Oh, that's good.
And then I'm like, then she had to get up on stage. I'm like, there's no way she's gonna wear this mask again. And so like, I think she did it like twice, and then after that, she was like, bought it and glasses and stuff like that. So
So she was just a big Mission Impossible fan. That's
Yeah. And we've, I kind of wish we've done some interesting jobs in that respect. We have done, we've disguised people. Yeah.
I'm assuming you can't name names, or can you?
I can't. Some of them are pretty cool. We've done, Michael Bay, I did a Super Bowl commercial for him years ago, which was like it was with Jennifer Lopez, and it was like the Scooby-Doo pull the mask off.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was DJ Khaled under like a mask we did of like A-Rod, which like no sense because they're not even this like close to looking the same. But we did that, and so we got to work on some pretty fun, weird things now and again. But Guardians of the Galaxy was the cool one. We got to do Guardians 3.
So, nice.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, we get to come in. Legacy kind of called us up, and we got to do a lot of the Ravagers. And so it's funny because there were a lot of them were already pre-existing, like from the first 2 movies, but like we reinvented them as silicone masks, and then they let us paint, like freestyle paint a couple of them, and it was fun. We had like 17 different aliens, and they show up in like Hollywood or the Christmas special. And so it was fun to see that. It was but it's interesting. Like again, you guys know because you work in film and television too, that like you'll work on stuff and then it's years later that it comes out, and it's like the story in between is like it's so long ago, that like it's fun to see it when it comes out, but it was so long ago. We worked on a movie. I don't know if I can say what it is.
Has it come out yet?
No. But it's a big. This director takes his time making these movies. I don't know if that's a good thing, and it's
okay.
It's a prequel coming out soon.
Oh boy.
to a franchise that has changed lead roles a couple times now.
We can leave it like that for now. You just keep it in the clear.
I mean, it's going on like 4 years ago that we did the pieces.
Oh wow.
So it's like, so when it comes out, it'll be interesting to see. But I'm like, man, I barely remember like what was going on here when we did that.
Yeah.
Your producing experience really comes into the light here with a lot of things. Like you work really well with pairing people up or teams or putting the right people in the right places. Do you feel like, I'm curious, back in the makeup days, especially, was that a helpful tool in your tool belt when, say, dealing with producers and such, or productions where they want to put the squeeze on you, or like if like in the negotiating powers, really?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it still happens now. It's different when I'm working with an effects company because they already get it. But when we're working with creatives and you're working with the especially in really what we do, because like what we do is so new to most people. They don't understand that. So I have to explain like why things cost the way they cost and whatnot. Definitely like that plays in daily. Like, so everything that I did in film school kind of does play out to a day-to-day basis.
Well, it's interesting you word it that way too. Like, that you have to explain because it's new and that sort of thing. Because in VFX, people tend to think, well, there's a computer, you just easy, right? But like in this case too, I imagine that somebody's going, well, you're just throwing on a mask. I mean, just a mask. I imagine it might be a phrase that somebody just throws around compared to like the makeup prosthetics application process. So.
Well, and explaining the difference between, so like I have a retail website. So and I'm selling castings of molds that we've already invested into.
Right.
So if you go on my website, you're seeing this cool mask that's $700. And then I get someone calling it for a custom mask, and it's like way past $10,000, and they're like, "Wait, your mask for $700 on our website?" I'm like, "You're not. That's a casting of a mask that I've already invested into. Like, you're not asking for that, right?" And so you have to kind of explain the process to them, to how did we land on that one casting, and everything it takes to go up there, and that they have to they incur those costs.
Now, I'm curious about that, just kind of on the line of like putting in the sheer volume of time to make some of these different masks. Yeah. What would you say is the longest amount of man hours you've had to put in on a single design?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. It's generally 1 to 5 days. Like on a. But if it's like I think recently we hit that. We did a fire breathing dragon mask because Yeah.
So we a 3-week job. Yeah.
If it's fire breathing, I guess.
It was the scale. It was the scale work. It was the symmetry and the scale work and the sculpture that really kind of was like Andrew took his time on it. He's a fast sculptor. So he can sculpt things pretty quickly. But I think this one, sometimes we have ideas that we have this idea board. It's like a dry erase board. It's in the sculpting room, and you'll see it. Like you'll walk in, and there'll be like sometimes it's an actual idea. Like we've actually thought about what we wanted to do, and sometimes it's just a cool name we landed on, like Annihilator. Save that. It's a good name. Yeah. One day that's going to be a mask. We have no idea what you are, Annihilator, but you'll be a mask one day. And then sometimes it's like fire breathing dragon. And so what it is we eventually we're mostly competitive with ourselves. You say probably more than we are with anybody else. In other words, we always want to try to outdo what we did last. And so in doing that, we explore new avenues of what's possible with the materials that we use. How can we push silicone further than we thought we could push it before? How can we push form off the face in a single casting? How can we use different elements like light, smoke, things like that within the same mask and still move and whatnot? And so we learn from those things and then we incorporate to the next thing. And so we finally got to a point where like we're working with some electronics friends or guys that we met that are in Canada, and they design my lighting systems and stuff. Before we were like buying prefab kits online, and now it's like I can call these guys and go, I want this to do this, and I want things to do this, and they figure it out, and then they send me the prototypes. So we finally got to a place where like we can make a fire breathing dragon. It's just with a smoke effect and lighting behind the smoke to light it up and project it, and so yeah, so eventually we're going to see it through. Like that's our thing. We kind of put those things out there so that we can't ever go back on it. Eventually, we're going to make that thing. Yeah. You know, it's like that's our challenge. Yeah, we're working on like a prototype for an animatronic mask right now.
Oh, Jesus.
And so that's cool. Yeah, we're close. But then the challenges that come along with that is that when you're marketing these things for retail, there's a lot of other things you have to think about, like insurance. You know, like we did this years ago. We're like, oh, we want to make digigrade stilts and have skins over them so we can make monster legs. And we did this, and we prototyped them and everything. And then I sent to my insurance company. They're like, no. And it was literally it killed the project there, because if I can't get insured on it, I can't risk the liability of someone falling and hurting themselves. Mm-hmm. So there's those things that play into the commercial aspect of what we do. Because again, we commercialize an aspect of the effects industry. I made it for everyone else. And so when we're coming up with something like an animatronic mask, I have to watch it. One, I don't want them to break it. I don't want to fix them all the time.
And you don't want to servo like pinching someone's face the wrong way by accident.
That's the other thing too. How do I set this thing an underskull, and so that there's no hard edges that are in contact with the skin? And so that was the challenges. And we're pretty close right now. Like 3D printing, things like that have been really in modeling, doing things digitally now. We do a lot of our stuff digitally now, and so we're able to kind of put things into a model and see how it might work, and then we build it. And we're pretty close to that one now too. So that's the next challenge.
Now, I know in terms of movies and stuff, like you've talked about Predator quite a few times over the course of this.
My favorite movie.
It's a great movie. I get it. But were there any other specific films or TV shows that kind of influences like the monsters that you like to make? Yeah.
Like, so Star Wars. I mean, I grew up in that generation. I feel like it's like when you say that, you feel like, oh yeah, poor Star Wars. But like I knew where I was when I saw Star Wars for the first time. I knew the reaction that I had when I came out of the theater. I still remember to this day. So it had a lasting effect on me. The mythology surrounding Star Wars. So later, as I even went to high school, I took classes on Young and the hero cycle and so when you see the plug and play into Star Wars, it makes sense because it's the most archetypical, simple version of the hero's journey. And that's storytelling in general. So Star Wars was the perfect example of that. Plus, it was cool, man. It had it just worked. It's funny because as much of as a fan I am to this day, probably nothing will ever capture what that first one did, because it was just perfect in so many ways, even in its imperfections. So it had a lasting effect on me. And thankfully, it's come back into my life so many different times. Like, like I said, the movie Sushi Girl, I got to work with Mark Hamill, and he became a friend. And it was like, hanging out with Luke Skywalker talking about Star Wars because he's a nerd too, you know, and like, and then I like again my journey even to film school was through Lucasfilms, and so there's been a lot of like Star Wars has come up in my life so many times that I'd be foolish to deny that, even though it sounds like it's not cool to say that anymore because everyone says Star Wars.
Well, everybody says Star Wars for a reason. I mean, I think anybody in film, and I'm going to say especially in effects, myself included, one of the first things you do is going to be something Star Wars related. The very first visual effects I ever did was hand painting a lightsaber over frames, you know, how many hundreds of frames with my friends with toy Star lightsabers, you know.
Right. I still nerd out in that stuff. Like that now I got to a place where I can collect things. I have toys. I can collect 1/6 scale figures, and I have like a ton of lightsabers just because I'm I'll pretend like it's for my kid, but it's really for me. Yeah, so Star Wars is definitely one of them. Jaws would be the next one, as far as because Jaws was the first time that a movie affected the way I looked at things in the real world. In other words, I was deathly afraid of the ocean because of Jaws. That movie, like I was like, wait, what? It's like, it can do what to me? And it was crazy because I mean, I know it had that effect on a lot of people. That it did. It don't, wasn't safe to go in the water. But dude, like rivers and lakes when I was a kid, I had problems with because I was just like, there's things in there that could eat me. And it was like this. Really, what it was this fear of what you couldn't see. It was fear of an element that you couldn't control. On land, I couldn't see what's going on. If I was in the water, I felt helpless. If something was in there I was toast. And so it really played on that. And so that was my first horror movie that had an effect on me. I would later go on to work in horror, and horror was never a huge thing to me. I was more of a sci-fi person, but Jaws resonated with me, and stay with that. And then my third movie is Magnolia. I don't know. I'm a sucker for his movies, and in the film sense of things, it was, I thought, perfect casting. It was an example of like how to use actors for what they're good at. I always say, like, for example, Tom Cruise. He's a great action hero, things like that. Tom Cruise is a better dick than anything else. If you cast Tom Cruise as a villain, right, you're going to get, because everything he's good at, that mugging, that smile, everything works so much better when he's an asshole. So Lestat and Collateral, but in his performance in Magnolia just killed me. It was so good because it was a humane anti-hero, I guess. Like he was a dick, and then by the end of the movie, you understand why he was, that for me was like storytelling through visual elements. Plus, they did things in a movie like that. Like as a film student, they broke all these rules, and they did things like at the most, insane climactic part of this movie. It rained frogs. And then he pulled off a sing-along where everyone's singing. And I was like, Jesus Christ, he's pulling this off. That's absolutely phenomenal. And then he ended the movie by doing the one thing that they tell you not to do. He had the actress, Muriel Walters, look at the camera, break in the wall, and smile, and the movie ended. And I was like, fucking, that guy's a hero. Well done, sir. So
that also sounds like a prime example of something that you're good at, putting the right people in the right places. So, I mean, I could see you in a casting position too.
Yeah, no, and I think maybe that's why I liked it. Like, I think I saw, I'm like, wow, this guy really did this. Like this, I love like Boogie Nights. I love all his movies, but when I watched that one, for some reason, that one was like just like he did everything right. And as a filmmaker, that was one of my things. There's so many other films, obviously, that I could say I love, but there's a reason why I love that one. There were so many things, like he broke rules, he cast correctly. I just, love that movie. So yeah, it's so different than all the other stuff that I work in all the time. Like, except for the frog part. Good job, Steve.
Yeah. Dude, thank you so much for your time. We won't keep you much longer. Where can people find you on the socials?
Thankfully, Immortal Masks everywhere. So
Immortal Mask everywhere.
Yeah. So Immortal Mask, Instagram, or Immortal Mask Facebook, Immortal Mask TikTok. But most importantly, our website. It kind of shows everything. Instagram is one of those places where I kind of use it as like an extension of our website. So I update that every day. So if you want to see new stuff we're doing, new masks, I'm posting probably daily of new stuff. So
all right, man. Well, thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure, seriously. And it was so great catching up too.
Oh, great catching up with you, man.
Yeah.
Fantastic hearing from you. Thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Damn, Logan. Great interview.
Hey, damn is putting it mildly. Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite parts was we hear all these cool stories and then, we end the interview and then we proceed to hear even more cool stories.
Which we will not talk about here.
Oh, of course not. But just hearing just the wealth of fun experiences that he's had kind of just,
oh my God, yeah,
going in his, as you said, like kind of niching down to his particular place.
I love George, and ever since I met him on the Devil's Carnival set, and the vibe he gave, like right out the gate, I was like, this guy knows what he's talking about. I want to hang around him. And this is my very first VFX supervising gig. And so I'm there just trying to keep up with everybody too, and we're all freezing our asses off. And, but he's one of those people that just made it like an absolute pleasure to just hang out on a set like this and see how they do what they do. And really an awesome example of like we were talking about pivoting. I think something a lot of people have had to learn over the past several years, in particular between COVID and just, pick a thing. So many people have had to pivot from their original plans, and to see someone in his mid 30s saying, you know what, I'm going to get into something new. And then even from then going into something new after that and finding massive success in that is just an incredible inspiration.
Oh yeah. No, there were certainly quite a few times during the interview where I was like, oh man, I need to reevaluate what I'm doing. Like, yeah, definitely a lot of cool inspirational stories there.
But he's one of the best out there, and it was an absolute pleasure catching up with him. All right. Well, Logan, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on, various social media. I'm FilmGuy89 on Twitter. I'm FilmGuy1989 on Instagram. And I'm on YouTube somewhere. I'm findable.
I'm on the Instagrams at Jake Akuna, and my company, VFX to Go, at VFX to Go is on the Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the threads now, I guess, and our website, www.vfx2go.com. I've been Jake.
And I've been Logan.
And we'll see all of you next time. And we really do need to work on that closing.
Well, we'll get there eventually.